Well, good afternoon, comrades. Thank you, John. John asked us to talk about opportunities and challenges, so being an obedient speaker, I'm going to start with opportunities and then move to challenges. I've served on the NPPD board now for 16 years. I'm in the waning years of my third term, and I do want to express my appreciation to Farmers Union for the constant support they've given me in holding this office and running for re-election. And I think the rest of us here at the table might all say the same. So we'll just start with thank yous right away. We have several really exciting opportunities right now. One is leadership, and just point on down the table here at the ones of us who are able to be here and several more who aren't. We have really an historic opportunity following this last election. And again, thank you, Farmers Union, and a number of organizations, other organizations that made that possible. But we have an historic opportunity to take the majority and take leadership in moving our public power utilities forward on a more renewable and sustainable path. We have leaders ready to lead. And so that's a very exciting thing that I have not seen in my tenure. And I think we're ready to grab the reins at the three largest generators in the state, OPPD, NPPD, and LAS, and kind of retool this treasure that we have to put us in good shape to grab the opportunities of the future. At NPPD, another opportunity we have is economics. I realize this is not a great year for farmers and for commodities, but at NPPD, we've had several years of good market prices and good results, good cash flow in the market known as Southwest Power Pool, where we now sell all our electricity, or most all our electricity. Over the last 5 years, we've had a less than 1% increase in our rates, cumulative over 5 years at the wholesale level, and 0% increase in rates at the retail level, and have had enough success in the market, enough surplus cash flow that this year we were able to return a rebate to our wholesale customers. So you will see that in your bill one way or another if you're one of the customers of our wholesale customers. With a cash flow better than budget, it leads me to our third opportunity, which is this is a year where tax incentives for renewable energy are beginning to expire or step down, and where many, many developers are interested in safe harboring their projects so that they can tie in the maximum return on the federal either production tax credits or investment tax credits for solar and wind. In my business at home, when we have excess cash flow and low prices on things we need to do our business, we see that as a great time to make some investment in strengthening our business for the future, and that's certainly how I see opportunity for NPPD right now. The last opportunity I'll bring up really is the last opportunity because it's a mixed bag, which is to say the development of technology, which has been tremendously rapid over the last few years. Electrification, increased efficiencies, increased renewable resources, battery and other technologies for storage of electricity, which is kind of a revolutionary thing. We're at the intersection with new technology of opportunity and challenge because there are many, many new technologies available to us. The challenge is picking the winners. So that's why I put it last on opportunities, but I think this is a very exciting time for public power in the state, for us to take just a step back, do solid evaluation, and see where we want to, what kind of public power we want to offer the state over the next 20 years. Challenges, we've got a couple big ones, and one is carbon. In 2018, global carbon in the atmosphere shot back up again and reversed a trend that we've seen over the last several years of decreasing carbon in the atmosphere. If you followed climate science at all, there's one trend that's perfectly clear, and that is that the science has been right directionally when it says climate change is coming and carbon in the atmosphere from human activity is a problem. Typically, it's been conservative. The consensus science has said, we expect by this time to see this result, and we've seen this result that's been conservative and not adequately predicted the degree of change we're going to see in climate. And certainly now with the release of the fourth annual climate assessment from the federal administration, we really hear an alarm that we've got to take action now. I feel like I'm trying to follow in John Eichert's footsteps here about now it's time for change, and we have to take up the call and do it. It's time is now. The other challenge we have, though, is political will. So we've got leadership on the board, and really all the boards, ready to take up action. But at NPPD, I don't know if you're aware, we're primarily a wholesale provider. We're about 1/3 retail and 2/3 wholesale. And so we sell most of our product to rural electric distributors. Butler County Public Power, Southern Public Power, Norris, Perennial, and so on. And that's where the political will to change, take advantage of these opportunities, and move forward is most needed. So I really want to take this opportunity here in this audience to encourage you to think about who your public power directors are at home. Where do you pay your bill? Butler, Perennial, Norris. And who are the directors you vote for? And let them know what you think about this being the time for change and this being the time to take advantage of strengthening and reshaping public power for the next 20 years. Because at NPPD, when we start talking about the kinds of opportunities we can take advantage of, we're likely to hear from our rural wholesale customers who are very devoted to what they think their job is, which is to keep prices low and to keep power reliable, but who have forgotten their roots, in my personal opinion, that the job wasn't just to create an economic service, but to improve the quality of life for the people that we serve. And I think the people I know on those boards, being dedicated the way they are to doing the job that they've asked for your trust to do, I think if you tell them that's what you want, they'll listen, but they've got to hear from you. So I want to close my comments with a call to action to all of you to think about who your, go back and find who your board members are. Take time to call them, take them to coffee, write a letter, and I'll hang around at the end of this panel if anybody wants to talk about that, because that's really going to be the last key to helping us move forward. I appreciate your attention, and what do you want next, John?
And while Rick is getting ready to talk, it's Eric. Eric. So, and it's just, boy, not that these guys are particular or anything, but it's just like you give them the wrong name, they get really fussy. And so, one of the things I want you to do is, in your book, go and please do read all of the bios of all of our speakers. And so we're trying to kind of shorten things up so we can pack more in. So I'm not reading all the bios of the speakers, but that's why we put them in your book. So please do read the bios, and you will be impressed at the expertise of the folks that we have here today. So take it away.
Thanks very much, John and Rick, for the opportunity to go next. My name is Eric Williams, and I am a new, soon-to-be board member at OPPD, representing Subdivision 6 in Northeast Omaha. So I just spent the last year talking to as many members of our community as possible in my neighborhood of Dundee and Benson, Raven Oaks, Ponca, Florence, North Omaha, and North Downtown. So it's kind of a diverse area, a lot of history, a lot of Omaha and small community history. And so I could do a lot of thumb pointing and bullet points from the campaign trail, but really now is the time to transition over into the leadership we need at our public utility. And so I'm very honored to have the chance to work alongside Rick and Janece starting in January, as well as NPPD and LES, to make sure that public power is providing the best outcomes for everybody across the state of Nebraska. The three things that I focused on during the campaign were, here's the bullet points: fair and affordable rates for everybody, improved public engagement with all members of our community, and investing in clean energy and new energy market opportunities. And I think that those principles really rang true to a lot of people who for a long time haven't heard from public power and didn't really know who their board member was or know what public power has done for them or the benefits we get from the system that has been in Nebraska in some form for about 100 years. And so I think they were engaged and interested to hear about public power and what OPPD can continue to do, and as Mary said, to improve the quality of life for everybody in our community. One specific challenge that we have at OPPD and at other utilities as well is a very high amount of fixed costs, but a very low amount of fixed revenue. And so in 2015, the fee and consumption cost was kind of rebalanced. So the fixed fee went up quite a bit, and the kilowatt hour cost came down. That's disproportionately challenging for people who don't use very much energy, low and moderate and fixed income households, people who generate their own energy and reduce the amount they buy from the utility, or people who are just conservative in their energy use and have energy efficient homes. And so I think that's one of the things that over the last 2 election cycles, 5 new board members out of the 8 seats have all been real specific about talking about, which is we need to make sure that everybody has affordable electricity and we're not just giving a discount to people who consume the most. And so that's something that I think we're going to want to look at. There's a real social and environmental justice concern that when you have a high fixed fee and it's very inexpensive to consume electricity, you're kind of encouraging more consumption and asking those who use the least to pay the highest rates. And so 5 of the 8 board members are all kind of on the same page, and I think that's something we're going to start working on in January. It is a very difficult challenge to make sure that we adequately fund the utility so that we can maintain and operate all of the existing facilities as well as the transmission and distribution lines without undercutting the revenue source that comes from residential, commercial, and industrial use of electricity. So we're going to have some challenges balancing out those revenues and the ongoing operating expenses that we have. The second point I highlighted throughout the last year was public engagement. And I think that a lot of people, particularly in Northeast Omaha, have felt that they were disconnected from their elected representatives. A number of people told me, you're the first person to ever knock on my door and ask my opinion. And I think that represents that people aren't familiar with the idea that public power has a board who are representatives of the people. And so, again, I think the 5 new board members have all demonstrated through our direct engagement with residents of Nebraska that public power should represent those interests, and we want to hear from people. We want to have public meetings, we want to be at events, we want to know what issues are coming up for people and how should we address those. Streetlights is a significant concern for people in North Omaha because of the security and safety concerns. And so I'm meeting with some people next week to talk about that. The timeline for shutoffs, if you receive a shutoff notice from the utility, you have 7 days to come back in line with your bill. But if you're paid on the 1st and 15th, or maybe you have a Social Security check and you're on a fixed income, a 7-day window might not work for you to get your bill back current again. And I would not have thought of that. That's not something that I have personally experienced. But talking to people over the last year, several people mentioned specifically the timeline for getting your bill current when you receive a shutoff notice. And so that's something that I'm going to focus on again. So I think the idea of public power, that the representatives who make the ultimate decisions about how our utilities operate, is extremely valuable to our community, and I'm looking forward to making sure that we have that public engagement and everybody feels connected to what public power delivers in our state. The last topic that I focused on was clean energy and new energy market opportunities. And in the kind of a planning process or in leadership meetings, you'll often hear about a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And over the last year and over the last several years, I've often heard new energy market opportunities called threats, which is very strange to me. If everyone bought an electric car and we all came home and plugged in exactly at 5 o'clock, you would see a sudden spike in demand, and that would be a problem for the electric grid. However, that is an extremely unrealistic view of the timeline for electric vehicle adoption, the timing of when people charge their vehicles, and the tremendous revenue opportunity that electrifying our transportation sector brings to Nebraska. If you put gasoline in your car, that's coming from a petroleum producer who is not in Nebraska. We do not produce petroleum in Nebraska. We do have ethanol, but we do not have petroleum. If you put electricity in your car, you are investing in your local public utility, and you are bringing that money back into the community. I ran a quick number this morning, and if a majority of the fleet of vehicles in Omaha electrified, it would be something like $150 or $200 million a year of additional electric consumption revenue back to the utility, which can be delivered over the existing infrastructure and distributed at night, which is when most people charge their electric vehicles, without significant additional generation equipment installed or transmission and distribution infrastructure upgraded. So I think that the idea that electric vehicles are a threat to the utility kind of represents one of the problems, and we need to make sure that we are viewing this as an opportunity. The same is true for wind energy, where we can invest in coal, which doesn't come from Nebraska and sends money to Wyoming, or we can invest in wind, and that pays property taxes in Nebraska and helps to fund local public schools. We can continue to produce energy at large centralized fossil generation locations, or we can encourage people to produce a portion of their energy at distributed locations, solar and wind on their own property, and help to have a more resilient, cleaner, and more technologically prepared grid for the future. And so, again, I think we've had a long time of talking about the threats to public power, and we need to view these as opportunities, because technology gets cheaper over time, and it gets more efficient and more productive. And so if we are not prepared to adapt to these new technologies, it's too bad they are coming anyway. And it's time for our leaders to recognize that our utilities need to be ready to take advantage of these opportunities and make sure that they are working to improve public power and improve lives in Nebraska. And so if you have any questions on those topics, I'd be glad to answer those as well. And again, I'm very excited to get started in January and be working with all of these great folks and hearing from people across the state. Thanks very much.
My name is Rick Yoder, and I have been on the OPPD board for 2 years now. So senior among the OPPD board members here. I'm very excited at the 3 new members, and thank you, as Mary said, to the Nebraska Farmers Union. I certainly appreciate your help and continued support.
Big wine and cheese.
Yeah.
Big wine and cheese.
So I don't know how to follow up Mary and Eric, really. I think the opportunities that we have are the challenge. We have with the OPPD, and I won't speak to the other utilities, but I know my feeling, having worked with the OPPD management for the last 2 years, is that there has been a way of doing things, and there has been some structure to their decision-making that we now have the opportunity to test the assumptions that were there, to challenge the assumptions that were there, and to shift those assumptions. Really, the major goals that I have, both out of the campaign trail, I serve from Sarpy County down to the Kansas line, 7 counties. Sarpy County is shared by 3 of the directors. I think I would really like to build on George Norris's original vision. His original vision, if you read his autobiography, and I encourage you all to do that, was to fight against the big corporate interests and to bring power to everyone. And he spoke often, and this was a function of the age he was in, of doing this totally with hydropower. Well, that was the age. We now have wind, we now have biofuels, we now have solar. You know, I would like to see, as Eric has said, an energy-independent Nebraska. Certainly as long as that's possible, as long as the sun shines, as long as the wind blows, as long as the grass grows, we can do that. But the challenge is getting there, and we can't do that with the assumptions and mechanisms that we have internally. What we need is what is called in the literature, I do work at UNO, strategic renewal. Strategic renewal is a function of revisiting your strategic goals, your customer goals, and making sure that we are paying for it. That is our fiscal duty. Fiduciary duty is to make sure that we do that. But it is very possible, and that technology's coming. I think we can move forward with that. What does that mean then for the 6 counties beyond Sarpy County, the 7 altogether, and those on the northern edge that are in the exurbs and rural areas of Omaha? I think certainly moving from centralized generation to independent generation or distributed generation is an opportunity not just for a big wind farm, but for the landowners throughout those 6 or 7 counties that I represent. I think that's great. I just returned earlier this week from a conference on health, energy, and the environment. I was very excited to see what's happening in smaller areas like Vermont. They have zero energy modular homes that are going in. As you know, from an economic development standpoint, OPPD and other utilities love to bring in the flagship Facebooks, you know, these big organizations, but they aren't really working as hard, in my view, on the small businesses. And in rural areas, I think we have a wonderful opportunity not just to build the small businesses, the technicians, those who can work on solar, those who can work on other renewable energies, but on modular, zero energy modular homes. Because we have a workforce problem in Nebraska. We have a housing problem in rural Nebraska, and things like this would be a wonderful thing for the utility to work on. So those are just some ideas. The thing that you get when you're on the board is you get plenty of ideas. The proof of the pudding is when you come to the conversations and working with management. I think management is seeing the light, and I think they're ready to move. As Mary said, we do need to have them hear from you, because it's just 8 board members against all of management, unless you're in the room as well, unless you're contacting people as well. That's it.
Gary be the closer. So I'm Janece Mollhoff. I'm from Ashland, Nebraska, and I ran in Subdistrict 7, which is also a rural area. And so when I started my campaign, I started with some agricultural groups in Saunders County. My friend Mike Williams introduced me to folks at the elevator in North Bend. And then I spoke with some groups, and they said, you know that your opponent is our lobbyist at the legislature. And I said, yeah, I know that, but I'm bigger than he is. So in talking with folks in my district, which is Saunders, Dodge, Washington County mostly, some suburban Douglas County, but people just want to have their voices heard. And that's what public power does for us. It allows you to have your voice heard. It allows you to, when you're the person at the end of the line, you get the same service as the person, as the Facebooks. So that's what public power, I think, and that's what our message needs to be, is that public power gives all of us a voice, and it gives all of us an opportunity to be served in the same way. So that's how I started. Our biggest challenge is to have affordable and reliable energy, and especially in our rural areas. Every time we have a storm, Meade's power goes out. And those are the issues we have to address. And we can do that through whether it's a beefed up grid, whether it's making sure that our transmission systems are rated at a level that's going to withstand the increasing storms that we're having, and making sure that we are that we're listening to our customers. So affordable and reliable energy and making sure that our grain dryers and our irrigation and our livestock barns have the energy that they need to run 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. So the biggest challenge is making sure that as we transition from a coal-based industry to a more renewable-based industry, is making sure that the reliability and affordability follows along. And that's really what I talked about, and I don't have anything to add then to what the others said. Thank you.
And Gary, as you're back in cleanup, you've been at this the longest, and so in the legislature, we've seen 3 bills that were clearly designed to undermine public power. That gets my attention really quickly. It should get everyone's attention. All came from the same source. It came from somebody who was identified with an entity who wants to undermine public power so they can cherry pick the system and pick out the best markets and leave the rest of us to figure it out. And of course, that's not what they say. They talk about consumer choice, those kinds of things. Those things are concerning, and so also some of the folks who are helping with those efforts are also folks who seem to have a hard time distinguishing between wind development and public power. So they're not only taking shots at wind, but they're also taking shots at public power.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Gary Thompson. I have been on the NPPD board for 5, I finished my 5th term, so it's been about 26 years. What are the opportunities and challenges as far as public power is concerned? My answer is we don't have any challenges because we have great leadership now. When Mary talked about the kind of leadership that we have now achieved on the boards of NPPD and OPPD particularly, as well as LES, I'm very comfortable and excited. I've been sitting on that board for 26 years and I haven't been able to do a damn thing about getting wind or anything else yet. And now I'm excited because we have the chance to meet the challenges that we have. And there's a lot of challenges that we do. But we have great leadership and I'm excited about the possibility we're looking. As a matter of fact, we're meeting next Monday. Monday. OPPD and NPPD, and if we can get LES there. Beginning to meet OPPD and NPPD directors together so that we can move forward with public power. The challenges of public power, as John has pointed out, that's probably one of the big challenges is to make sure that people understand public power, how important it is, how beneficial it is to the people of Nebraska. I think it was Eric that pointed out that people don't know about public power. They're interested if I flip the switch and the power and my lights go on, that's all I need to know about electricity and the power industry. And so we try to deal with it, and we do. Now, I'm just going to say, I'm excited because we've got some real leadership to meet the challenges we have and the opportunities that I now see available to public power in Nebraska. So, questions?
Yep.
If anybody has any.